what questions should I ask my players so I can get feedback? And I think the premise for this question was, and what I've had before as well, if you just ask your players, oh, how did you find that session? You usually don't get much good feedback. It's usually like, yeah, it was good, and that's it. So what sort of questions could you ask your players to get the correct answers you want, I guess?
Yeah. There's a two-parter to this. One is there's questions you ask the group as a group, and then there's questions you ask individuals. So if you are just looking for general feedback, which the question makes me think you are, and you're not looking to like see if a specific player was zoning out for a reason that you can control, or if it's their life or something like that, that's another thing. And so based on the question, I'm going to say you're just saying to the group, got any feedback? You could send it as an email, or you could do it in the session or whatever. But I recommend premising your question and say something like, hey, so we've been doing this for a while, and I really want to put in the effort to make this game as fun for you as possible. And I'm willing to be a little bit vulnerable and take some criticism, or think of it as feedback, whatever you want to call it. And you say that to the group first. So you say, I'm really wanting to make this game better for you. So anything that comes to mind, and then you say, are there any things that I've been doing that you think I could streamline, or that you'd like to see more of? That's kind of the thing, is like, have them latch on to something that happened in your game that they can say just more of that, or less of that. But then you might also get players who say, I want less shopping. And people say, wait, no, but I love shopping. And so there's like a conflict. And then you're like, but then you identify it, right? You see that there's a tension in different play styles. And that's good feedback too, right? Because then maybe you can help someone with shopping off the group game, maybe, or something. You can find different solutions. But I recommend premising your question to let them know what kind of feedback you are looking for. And I just give an example. You could say it a lot of different ways based on what you need. And then just ask them something that they don't have to like, don't ask something open-ended, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, if you say, what's something in our sessions that you really liked and you want to see more of, or what's like a plot hook that you're like really latched onto and you're eager to see how that goes. Because then it's like, oh, there's like an answer that they can give that it's still open-ended. Yes, it's not like yes or no, but they can latch on to something specific. You don't say, oh, what sort of DM style do you want me to adapt? Because then it requires them to like have studied DMing styles, and they're like, what? No. And if they're new players, they don't even know what to ask for. They're just like, oh, I enjoyed that combat against that giant. That really was scary, and we really came together. There's a lot of different ways you could go about it. That's how I like to get feedback. If I'm asking the group, whole different question if you're going like individually or whatever.
Yeah, I think they meant the group just so they can improve. And you pretty much explained what my main point was going to be, but better than I would have. So I usually will ask for each player to tell me, say, the last 5 sessions, what's been one thing that's happened that has been your favourite, and then one thing that happened that has been your least favourite part of playing in the games. And I learned this because I used to do the open-ended thing, and it sort of took me a while to realise that players generally aren't as into D&D as DMs, I think. I'm maybe getting some hate backlash on saying that, but because there's going to be players out there that love D&D. But even before I did any YouTube stuff as a DM, I was consuming loads of YouTube content to try and become a better DM, to learn lore about this, to do this and that. I don't think players do that very often. I think they generally just want to turn up, have fun. They might look at some, how to play Rogue type of videos. So if you ask them, what do you like about the session? What do you like about my DMing as a whole? They might not really understand the fact that you have to do pacing and spotlight and stuff like that. So they're not going to be like, oh, I really like the way that you put the spotlight on in each of us. They won't understand that. So you really need to put it down to what actually happens in the session, like you said. So, oh, I really like this part when this happened. And then you, as the DM with more knowledge, you can then be like, oh, okay, so what they're actually meaning there is they like to be challenged. Or what they're actually saying there is they like
Yeah.
sort of started waffling there.
I think
But
that's great. There's one other thing I want to
think
say that's a twist on the question. You don't always have to ask a question. You could put something in your session where you say, I'm going to just put this NPC in front of them and see, and start a timer and see how long they role play with them. And based on how much they role play, that might be very telling to you, or how much they try to role play. That might be very telling to you what kind of style they have or what they enjoy. Or you could try doing a random encounter if you haven't tried that, to see if they even care, if it's not based on the story. And if they don't care because they're like, it's just some random encounter, this has nothing to do with a story, it's just some wolves, and they're just like, can we just hurry through this? And they don't really care, they kind of start looking at their phones, then probably only do story-based stuff or stuff that hooks them in, and they don't just want like combat puzzles. There's a lot of different things you can do to kind of farm feedback from how they behave as well. That can also be part of it if you're very deliberate about it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. Not even asking questions. I think if you pay attention to body language and what players are doing when the spotlight's not on them, that can also be a part. So I've tried it in the past. I think there's actually a question related to this later on. But I've tried it in the past where when the party splits, actually splitting the players, i.e. so some be like, okay, you're not coming next week, you're coming a week after, and you're coming next week. And I found that actually if you do get your pacing right, you do get your spotlight right, it's still interesting for the people that aren't there, because they're now watching a story that hopefully is interesting if you've made it correct. And I think that's another lesson I learned. So just watch the table and watch the body language. And if, say, the spotlight is on one of your characters, on one of your players, and 3 of the other ones are all on their phone, then this probably isn't a very interesting scene. So maybe change it up a bit, maybe do something else. And you can tell quite a lot just by how other people at the table are reacting to bits and bobs. So that's a really good point as well.
Along with that, I know I'm getting a little off topic now, but when you split the party, some players actually enjoy having other players kind of like lead, let's say. So I'm usually like a big talker in my groups, and some people don't want to talk as much, and they appreciate that I kind of handle some of like the role play until there's like a role play that they really like and they can jump into. And so that's another thing, is sometimes it's almost like you've split the party even when you haven't, because some players are just kind of like observing what the other players are doing and they enjoy it. And I've asked those players all the time, like, hey, you were pretty quiet tonight. And they're like, oh, I had a blast. And I'm like, okay, but you were just observing most of the time. So it's almost like you did split the party. And so there's different play styles. And some people really don't mind watching, and they're enjoying what other people are doing, while other people only enjoy it if they like have something to do with what's happening. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good point, actually, because I think that happens more than you'd think, that people are just happy to be there for the ride and not be the centre of attention all the time. There's quite a few players I've had. In fact, I'd say it's probably around about 50-50 for people that like to be in the spotlight, and then people that like to be for the ride or lift others up. That's another thing as well. There's some players that what they actually enjoy and get the most satisfaction from is teeing up another player's character to do something awesome. Which they're the best players, because they're helping your story without you having to do as much. So there's lots of different types of players, and just keep that in mind and watch them.